Hello. Which ones of these are similar weights here? Hi, Kona. Oh goodness. Hi, Kona. What's going on, bud? What do you think? Yeah, Kona. Kona, we should become the circus. I can juggle. You can. Sorry, buddy. I love you. All right. So what is happening, people? It is Brian Alsruhe with NeverState.com, and today's video is completely unnecessary, and I'll tell you why in a second. However, what we're going to be doing is just going over the different shoes that you can wear for different lifting events, or the overhead press versus squat. What different shoes you should have on to gain a little bit of an advantage. Now, the reason why I say this is completely unnecessary is because, guys, I've been lifting for almost 25 years now, and the first 21 to 22 of which I never had any special shiny shoes, right? I was deadlifting and squatting and whatever I had. To be completely honest, for the majority of the time in commercial gyms and everything, I would just kick off my shoes and be barefoot, sock-footed, for both my squat and my deadlift, and I was able to get up to the mid-6s in bare feet, no problem at all. So for those of you who are going, man, I really want those shoes, however, I don't have $200 to drop on a pair of stupid things I put on my feet, realize that it is not like a miracle thing. A lot of people buy the new special shoes hoping it's gonna put 30 pounds on their squat or on their overhead press, and it just doesn't happen, guys. It makes you feel slightly better. So in good conscience, I have to tell you people that shoes do not make the man. But I would be lying if I told you they didn't make a difference in some of your lifts. Not to mention the fact that people like to buy things. Now, $200 means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but $200 for a pair of shoes is a lot of money, and I just think people should probably know what they're getting into and what they can actually be used for before they drop that kind of cash. Now, also, please realize that there is a reason why there are like 50 different shoe manufacturers with 100 different styles and brands and everything. So what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you, but I am gonna talk about a couple principles about like the soles and different things like that you can apply to whatever types of shoes that you like personally. So for instance, there's certain shoes like tennis shoes or running shoes that I would very, very rarely tell you to use in the lifting game. I'm gonna cover when they are important, but for the most part, these are just gonna be referenced, as opposed to something that lifters, they're gonna hear a lot more about. Now, there are certain shoes that I'm gonna completely get out from the beginning that I have tried, and I'm just tossing from here. One of which is the Nike Metcon. I know a lot of people are a big fan of this shoe, and I got this for free when Nike flew us out to go do that stuff with Miles. Now it is currently a dog chew toy. Sorry, Nike. But guys, for me personally, and what I do in the gym, the sole of this is a little bit too hard, and it's like a mix of two bad things, right? So it's kind of like a lifter because there's an elevated heel a little bit, but then it's also not soft enough to really be pliable for like a cool cross-training kind of carry type of shoe. So for me personally, this is absolutely out. Also out is the Reebok Nanos, which would normally kind of be in my genre of shoes that I like to train with. However, I've never had the opportunity to train with the Nanos. I like the style of the Nano 8s and the sole. However, the Nano 9s, I feel like they change out a little bit, and I'm not a fan, so I don't even want to try those. Now, guys, also realize that I could care less about what the shoes look like. It is all about performance for me. So when I talk about these and certain brands, just stick in whatever brand that you would like. If I say a minimalist shoe, each type of, Nike has theirs versus Reebok versus whoever. So when I'm talking about those things, just keep that in mind that you can apply this to whatever. Just because I like using these does not mean that you need to use them. Apply it to your own stuff and make sure that it fits your foot the right way that you're going to, so you can be as safe as possible and still perform up to a higher level just by kind of changing the things that you put on your feet. So with all of that said, now we're gonna jump into the dirty, dirty little world of performance enhancing shoes. So we might as well start this conversation with the big four lifts. Let's start out with the deadlift. Now, the majority of my career, and still to this day, my preference for the deadlift is to go in bare feet or in my socks. That's what I prefer to do. However, a couple years ago, I ended up breaking a bone in my foot, and it's got my toe doing some weird stuff. I never got it fixed because of all the other health issues that were happening. So for that reason, now I like to deadlift in a minimalist shoe. This is actually my favorite strongman shoe, carry shoe, deadlifting shoe of all time. However, they no longer make it, and it has been replaced by this newer version, which I do not like nearly as much, because when I'm personally looking for a shoe for something like a deadlift or really conditioning, really anything that has to do with training, I'm putting a lot of force to the outside of my foot. So I like there to be at least a certain amount of leather strapping that kind of holds my foot together. And in this, it's mainly kind of mesh. So not really a fan comparatively to the old version. However, this is what I have to deal with now. This is what you currently saw me just pull that 700-pound deadlift in. I really like these soles because whenever you're doing a deadlift, you want to keep the soles pretty much as flat as possible and as low profile as possible. If you use something that has a big sole in it, something like this, number one, that is a deficit that you're pulling from, right? If the sole of your shoe is an inch thick, that's like standing on top of an inch thick plate and pulling your deadlifts from there. So that's something you want to consider. Also, if you're pulling in something like a running shoe or a tennis shoe, you need to think about it like squatting on a mattress. That's what people always talk about when they talk about tennis shoes, is that what running shoes and tennis shoes are made to do is to kind of dissipate that impact. So as your foot strikes, the impact isn't as great on your heel and you continue to run for long distances. However, when you're trying to move heavy things and impart the force that you're creating from your legs into the floor so you can move that bar, having a squishy surface to push on is like squatting on a mattress. You go to push, it goes down. Now, we're talking about very minimally here, guys. However, when you're talking about big weights, it absolutely does matter, and it can hurt you with your ankles rolling, your knees, your ACL. There's a lot of things that can happen when things get kind of squishy and wobbly when you're under load. So you do want to be careful. For that reason, most people choose to deadlift in a flat-soled shoe. They even make things called Deadlift Slippers, which is nothing more than really exactly what it sounds like. It's a slipper that's super flat so that you can wear it. However, in a lot of competitions these days, they will not allow you to deadlift in bare feet, so that's why people go with as flat as possible. Now, a lot of people do like to deadlift in lifters, and most of the time when you see that, you say that's a beginner, they don't know what they're doing, or they're doing it for some other reason. Most people, deadlifting in a lifter is going to change the angles, and it's going to make the lift much harder. It's going to throw the bar forward. You can't drive into your heels as well. There's a lot of things that happen on when you throw a lifter on, plus you're at a deficit again. I personally do not like doing deadlifts in lifters unless I'm intentionally trying to make the movement harder. So on my dynamic effort day, I might do all my dynamic effort squats for like 10 minutes, moving quickly, and then directly go right into my 10 minutes of dynamic effort deadlifts. And really the reason why I'm doing that, I would tell you, is so that I can make it harder. However, in reality, it's because I don't feel like changing my shoes. Now, it was a couple years ago, but a channel called Masthetics, which is now defunct, they deleted all their videos, but they put up an excellent video, which was much smarter than I am, about good reasons why lifters could actually increase the leverages of your deadlift and stuff. And I never actually found it to work out for me personally, but for some people, maybe it does work. And if it does for you, then that's awesome. And I hope that you find success in that. But for most people, deadlifting in lifters is a no-go. You're gonna want something super, super flat, like something along the lines of these. Or the good old-fashioned Chuck Taylors, which is never a bad choice for most lifting things. All right, so now if we move on to the bench press, to be honest, your shoes really don't matter too much there. A lot of people will choose to use lifters because it will elevate your foot a little bit, which helps a lot of people get a little bit more leg drive into the bench press. But secondly, for some people, the bench is set up so high that their feet kind of dangle a little bit, and nothing could be worse when you're trying to promote power into the bar than when your legs are doing this. It's embarrassing and it's not cool. So either you can slide up plates next to the bench so that you can get some leg drive, or some people just choose to wear lifters and do it that way. But to be honest, if you're bench pressing, your shoes really don't matter that much. Which brings us to the squat. So like I said earlier in the video, I got up to like mid sixes in the squat in bare feet. It was no problem for me. Like after that, I actually went and talked to a really, really good powerlifting coach named Matt Gary, who turned me on to Olympic lifting shoes. And I will say, they do absolutely make you feel more stable. It kind of makes you feel like you're part of the floor, which is really, really nice. For a lot of people with ankle mobility or hip mobility problems, the raised heel can help them hit depth a little bit more. And for some people, it helps them get more hip drive involved. However, a lot of people, these don't help out whatsoever, and they still really like squatting in Chuck Taylors. Now, if I do not have my lifters with me, I will choose something like a minimalist shoe to go in if I'm in a place that will not allow me to use bare feet. However, if I don't have these, I'm probably going bare feet. One thing that I will absolutely say is that if you're squatting in anything like a tennis shoe or a running shoe, you're gonna run into a lot of problems. Now, I've squatted in Nike free runs before, however, I cannot recommend it, because again, I was squishing all over the place and I had to do it for my circumstances. However, if I can give you one piece of advice, it'd be you're better off squatting in no shoes or $40 Chuck Taylors or whatever you can get a hold of better than a shoe that's gonna dissipate that energy, because you do not want to be rolling around when you're trying to push energy into the floor. Which brings us to the overhead press, where a ton of athletes prefer to use a heeled shoe or a weightlifting shoe, Olympic lifting shoe. It just kind of throws your hips and everything in a better position for you to get that bar over top the middle of your spine as you're pressing it out. So I actually love using these for my overhead press. If I do not have them, I will use minimalist shoes. Again, I will not use tennis shoes for anything involved with moving weights. However, if you think buying a heeled shoe is going to add like 10, 15 pounds to your overhead press, it absolutely is not. It's just gonna make you feel like you are more rooted into the floor, and when you apply force, it actually goes more into the bar than kind of wobbling around on your feet. So I do absolutely love these, and if you're gonna do any sort of Olympic lifting, I would highly recommend that. However, these are not by any means like a game changer. So if you do not want to spend the money on these, do not worry, you do not need to. Chucks work too. All right, so that covers like the big four. Now for my strongman people. I actually got involved in the sport and I wore nothing but Nike free runs. However, in my very first strongman competition ever, I had a truck pull, and I found that by the end of that truck pull, I was creating so much force and torque into the ground, trying to get that thing moving around, that these squares of Nike free runs would just start popping out. And I also found that when I was doing a heavy yoke carry or a heavy keg carry or really heavy anything carry, I loved how these made my feet feel because it had good cushioning for carrying those weights, and I still felt like it was flat enough that I was maneuverable and athletic. However, they would not hold up. So as you can see here, even I'm losing them. So these are no pair of shoes. They get chewed on now. They are no longer part of my strongman arsenal. I would not recommend them just because I do not think they're gonna hold up. However, it's a really good try, Nike. However, your Metcon shoes are even worse. So I'd rather see you guys use these before the Nike Metcons, at least if your feet is anything like mine and your training is anything like mine. So yeah, sorry Nike. Now for me personally, if it's a deadlift event, most strongman contests will let you go in bare feet, and that's what I do. If not, I wear a minimalist shoe. Also for all of my carry events, loading events, things like that, I also wear minimalist shoes. The reason why is because I feel like these are very athletic. Now these are actually a pair that I just bought to try out, which I find are very similar to these. I like a small footprint as far as the sole goes because I feel I can move around a lot. As far as moving events go, some people actually prefer to wear tennis shoes because of you might have a 900-pound yoke on your back, and if you're wearing a minimalist shoe, oftentimes it will feel like the bones of your legs are just getting driven up into your pelvis. So as good as it can be for transferring that force into the bar, it can beat you up pretty bad. So some people do choose to use a tennis shoe or a running shoe. However, whenever I'm carrying something heavy, this has created even more instability inside my shoe. I feel like I'm wobbling around and it's kind of wish-washy, as well as the fact that your ankle's underneath a 900-pound yoke. If this thing tries to twist a little bit because your shoe gives, you very well could roll an ankle, ACL stuff. There's a lot of bad things could happen. It's already a dicey situation that I personally choose not to make any dicier here. When it comes to loading events, tire flip events, throwing events, I like to wear things like either my lifters, the minimalist shoes. There are some people that actually like to wear some combat boots. I was just walking my dogs. But there are many people that will wear work boots or combat boots for loading events to give them a little bit more of a height advantage if you're a little bit shorter. Sometimes you can get like an inch worth of height there to the bar, and also some of them come with steel toes. And if you pass out on the stone, that might be a really good thing. For pulling events like truck pulls or something where you're trying to do something along those lines, people will grab climbing shoes, people will grab wrestling shoes, people will grab anything pretty much they can to get as much traction as possible. However, I have very limited experience in that, so I would tell you probably reference someone who's smarter than I. Again, Chuck's work. Now for general physical preparedness or just throwing conditioning in the mix, you should really wear whatever shoes are gonna match the type of conditioning you're doing. If there's gonna be a lot of sprinting or running, I would probably tell you to put on the tennis shoe or the running shoe, because that, you don't really want to be doing sprints in these. I'm not saying you can't, it's probably not the smartest idea, but I do all my jumping, all of my leaping, that kind of stuff is all done in this. I am guilty of sometimes running in these. However, I try not to do any carries, at least heavy carries or really fast running or extended running in my lifters. If there's gonna be a lot of that, I typically will throw something like this. But for the most part, if I'm doing conditioning, I'm trying to get the smallest soled shoe that I possibly can so I can be as athletic as possible. I like to be able to move quickly. A lot of people like a bigger, flatter sole like the Nike Metcon. I personally don't. I want the sole to be as small as possible so my feet move quickly, and that's a lot of things that are going on with weighted carries, because to be honest with you, a lot of times I'm tripping and falling and just trying to survive. So having a smaller soled shoe allows me to be more athletic. If they get bigger and clunkier, I tend to just kind of clop around and trip and fall. So yeah, I like to keep the shoes as small as possible. When it comes to any sort of conditioning stuff, unless it involves running, at which time I'm going to try to prepare my feet for the pounding that they're about to take with the running. Because I am not that light. All right, so there you guys go. That is my personal preference for what I like to wear during my training. Now, like I said earlier with shoes, so much goes into the personal preference. So what works for you probably isn't gonna work for me, and what works for me necessarily is gonna work for you. But when you're talking about things like carries and not using something like a lifter versus something like a flat-soled shoe or a running shoe versus all those principles should be able to apply to whatever type of shoes that you like to stick on your feet, and hopefully it'll keep you as safe as possible and performing to the top of your game. Because like I said, for certain lifts like your squat or your overhead press, this might help a lot, or wearing boots for a 1-inch advantage on a loading event might absolutely help in the difference between placing between third and second. However, realize that you do not need to go spend any money at all on different shoes than you currently have. I'd prefer not to see you squatting or deadlifting in your running shoes. However, if that's all you have, people, I made amazing progress not knowing any better than that, and you can too. It's not optimal, but guys, there is no reason to go out and try to kill yourself to spend money on shoes that you do not need. I'd much rather see you spend it on programming, on coaching, on education for lifting, but I definitely, these aren't as necessary as they want. However, if you do have a lot of expendable income and $200 does not mean much and you want to throw it away on lifters because it's going to give you like an extra pound on your overhead press, then please feel free to do that. I just want you guys to know what you're getting involved in and what shoes personally have worked best for me throughout my game and what I'm lifting, so hopefully you can apply it to your training. That's it for me right now, guys. I do really appreciate everything you guys are doing to support me. I'm obviously not being supported by any of these companies. They're just personally what I like to use. So guys, I do thanks so much for staying with me. I hope it was helpful. I will catch up with you later in the week. Until I do go out to something amazing in our lives, keep working hard, people. Be nice to each other. I'll see you then. Oh goodness. Hi, Kona. What's going on, bud? That was unexpected.
I'm gonna do an alternate.
And now Kona is given, I feel like there's a family channel, Kona. You should probably, I could probably blur out this general area. What do you think? Yeah, Kona. Kona, we should become the circus. I can juggle. You can. Sorry, buddy. I love you.